So, babe.
Yeah.
Quick little trip through NBA stats all time.
Okay, bring it.
Who has the most points?
Michael Jordan.
That would be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with LeBron James about to take over. Who has the most, I'll give you this one. Who has the most free throws?
Scottie Pippen.
Karl Malone from the Utah Jazz. And who has the most assists? I know you'll get this one.
Dennis Rodman.
John Stockton, also from the Utah Jazz. Who is the greatest team of all time?
The Bulls.
The Lakers. But we're doing the Chicago episode right now, people. Let's roll.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey listeners, ever wonder what it would be like to blow up your comfort zone at the tender age of 50? Well, we did just that. When our last kid went off to college, we hit the road in search of a new hometown. Now we bounce from city to city and bring you along for the ride. This is the Skip Town All-Stars podcast. Welcome, All-Stars. So we are doing an episode about all things Chicago. We both felt it was very apropos since I'm from Chicago and we've been to Chicago several times. Why not do an episode about Chicago? If anyone knows Chicago, it would be me.
It would be you.
And I'm representing today. I have my Loyola University sweatshirt on. So I wasn't just a girl from Chicago. I actually was a girl that was all over Chicago. I can honestly say that I've been to almost every part of that city. And so I feel like I'm pretty versed on being able to tell you where to go and where not to go. And James has come along for a lot of that ride.
I have actually. I've been to Chicago probably 5-6 times now.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So it makes sense that we do an episode about Chicago.
Yeah. Chicago, I've really grown to love it. In fact, we'll talk about it in a minute. I think I've grown to love it more than you do. And it was actually on one of my top 5s of destinations where we would eventually end up.
You came late to the game. So we're not even going to talk about that. You came late to the game, and being a Chicago lover, I'm not going to fault you for it, but you did come late to the game. One thing I'm going to ask you is, if you ever go to Chicago, where should you not go?
You should not go to Caprini Green.
No, a White Sox game.
Oh, spoken like a true Cubs fan.
You
just alienated half of our audience on the South Side right now.
What South Side, Schmouse Side?
But you grew up in the South Suburbs. Isn't that like
I did.
the same?
And my family's in the South Side, but I'm definitely a North Sider Cubs fan. And we are going to get into all that baseball rivalry and whatnot. But I think first things first is that we should talk about our last experience there, which was at an awful Airbnb.
It was a really bad Airbnb.
Yeah. So we're going to shit talk this Airbnb for a little bit. And basically, we're going to probably shit talk Airbnbs for quite some time because now our experiences have not been great with Airbnbs. And here's what I've come to realize. I think we talked about it in our Airbnb versus hotel, but maybe I didn't specifically say this. Airbnb used to be great because it used to be people's homes that they would rent out. Now Airbnb is nothing but rental places with shitty furniture. And this one that we rented in Roscoe Village was no exception. It listed that it slept 10 people and had one couch that sat 3 people. And the couch was so uncomfortable that we had to take the cushions off the couch and sit on the floor. So that Airbnb was terrible. It was in an area called Roscoe Village, which
is nice.
Yes. But when I was living in Chicago and going to Loyola, that area was actually pretty bad. Like nobody ever went to that area. It wasn't called Roscoe Village. It was like called the west side of Chicago. It was called west of Ashland. If we're going to be like accurate, it was west of Ashland, and nobody ever went west of Ashland unless you had to. But now Roscoe Village, like most parts of most big cities, has gentrified. And now they have jean stores that are selling $300 jeans and, $200 tennis shoes. And it's quite expensive. So west of Ashland is no more.
All I can say is all of the houses in the area where we were staying, where Airbnb was, were nice. Ours was nice from the outside.
I love it also when, being from Chicago, everyone converts their basement into a garden apartment. Or look, it's a basement that has been carpeted. Like, let's just call it what it is. But people will say it's a garden apartment, and then they'll like charge like an astronomical amount for rent. So when I rented this Airbnb, it said, it has a garden, it has a basement attachment or whatever the heck it was, a basement apartment. I don't even know. All I know is I knew immediately, okay, it's a basement. They put carpet in it, and James is going to hit his head on the ceiling.
Yeah, that one cement truss that came across the ceiling as I walked into the bathroom. I think I split my head open on that thing like 3 times that week.
I think you had to duck in the shower too.
I did. Yeah.
It was pretty
Yeah, it was pretty
bad.
ridiculous.
But here's the thing. Like, we had 7 people with us. We had our family plus 2 of our friends, Patrick and Susie. And so I had to get a place that slept 7. I vacillated between getting like a couple of different hotel rooms. I really did. I went back and forth. This wasn't cheap. And in the end, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would do it the same way, because the truth was we were all able to be a group in this house. As crappy as the furniture was, as many times as he cracked his head open on the ceiling because it was too low, we still got to hang out in the shitty kitchen, and we still got to bring takeout food in, and we still got to watch TV on their shitty TV, and we all got to be together. In a hotel room, we would not have been able to do that. We could have all gathered certainly in a room, but it just would have been really tight. So in the end, I mean, I would do it again.
But Roscoe Village for us was actually a great place to stay in the end. Whatever it was before when you lived there the first time, it was actually great because it was close to the L. The girls
train station.
The girls went to Lollapalooza. Lollapalooza was in town that week. The girls all got to go, and they got to ride the L home that night, and we were able to like walk to the train station and pick them up.
Yeah.
It was great. And
it was close to Wrigley Field because I wanted to go see a Cubs game. So it was in walking distance of everything, which is what I wanted. So I gave up the comforts of the Airbnb for the size of the Airbnb and the location. Yep. So in the end, that actually weighed out more. And I think that's something that every traveler has to make a decision on when deciding their lodging. And for us, nobody talks about the shitty Airbnb except for me. Well, and James. But
I didn't even remember it until we started talking about Airbnbs for LA.
Well, then,
and
there you go.
Like,
there you go. I think the Airbnbs bother me more than they do you overall.
I think so too. But I also remember like just being stressed out that week because I was working, because the girls were all together. We had Parker with us. She was at Boise State at the time she came. We had our 2 friends were with us, and I wanted to be able to, enjoy myself that week. So all I remember is that week being particularly stressful overall for me. I forgot totally about the couches.
Wow. And for me, it's like,
that's all you think about.
It is all I think about. That couch. There's no S. That couch.
The couch.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's get right into Chicago and like the many trips that we've taken. That one trip, we were in Roscoe Village, which again is on the northwest part of the city, but we have stayed in different parts of the city on many different trips. So what do you want to talk about? Well,
let's stick with that trip for a second, because we had done something on that trip that we had never done before.
Oh, we went to a Cubs game.
No, we'd been to Cubs games before.
Oh, yeah, we have.
But
not with that whole group. And we never sat.
Some of the people were new with us, or maybe, I don't know. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is we did that boat ride around the city.
Oh, okay. All the years I've lived in Chicago, born and raised, never did an architecture boat tour. And that was
pretty badass.
Really, really fun. Yeah, that was great. Actually, somebody suggested it to me who was visiting Chicago. Like when I know when I was
somebody who had never been there before was like, "Hey, you should check out your city."
Yes, exactly. It was one of my clients from when I owned my day spa. She said, "Oh, I was in Chicago. I took this boat tour," and I said, "Oh, I'm from Chicago." And she said, "Oh, don't you love the boat tour?"
And you're like, "Boat tour? What boat tour?"
I think it's one of those things that when you live in a city, you just don't always do the things that the city has to offer because you live there and you're doing the grind every day. So you're like, a tour? I need to get to work. Yeah, I need to get to work. Or, oh, Saturday I'm visiting, Saturday I'm going out like drinking with friends. I'm going to do a boat tour. But as a guest, you have to do a boat tour.
Yeah. So we got to see all kinds of architecture. We got to see how they reversed the flow of the river coming in from Lake Michigan.
It was a Chicago River we took the boat tour on.
Yes. We got to see a whole bunch like not abandoned, but like sort of.
Yeah. Like non-functioning drawbridges.
Yeah. And of course, for some people, probably not us, you got to see Trump Tower and all those other places. So it was cool. I mean, we got to see like the old Tribune building, if I remember, all that stuff. Anything that faced, I don't even know. You can tell me what that channel or canal is.
Yeah, the Montgomery Ward's building was there. In any case, it was all the buildings along Chicago River, and the tour started on the western part of the city and came down to I think we even saw part of Navy Pier. So it was a nice boat ride. And I'm not going to get this accurate, but I think when Mayor Daley went to San Antonio, he came back and said, I want Chicago to look like this, because San Antonio has a river going through the city.
The Riverwalk, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's San Antonio. Somebody may correct me. They may say it's Austin. But I remember when he went to go visit a city that had a beautiful river running through it and said, why don't we have these great restaurants along our river? And there's boat tours, so it'd be great to have the boat stop and this and that. So he actually made that happen.
And the mafia had to figure out another place to dump the bodies.
So that boat tour was pretty fun. And we brought Susie and Patrick with us, and I think they enjoyed it too.
Yeah, definitely. It was great. You guys went to the Bean, of course. Every visitor to Chicago, what's that area called? That park or whatever?
Oh, it's Grant Park.
Grant Park.
Yeah.
Okay. So Grant Park, the Bean. It was the middle of summer.
Well, can we tell people what the Bean is? You're just saying the Bean like they know what it is. It's a art installation in the middle of Grant Park, and it's really cool. It's super hot. It's made of metal. I don't know what alloy steel it is, but it's made of metal. It's in the shape of the bean. And if you're there in June, you had better stand back, because you can feel the heat beating off of that as you're trying to take selfies.
It does look like a bean for sure. No question.
It's the shape of a bean.
I don't think they intended it to look like a bean.
It 100% looks like a bean. I don't know.
I know. But did the artist say, this is the bean for Chicago? Like, why would Chicago's symbolism be a bean?
I don't think it symbolized Chicago. I think it was an art installation.
And somebody just said, this is the biggest metal bean I've ever made in my life.
Yeah, artists, you can't make sense of what an artist has in their head. Okay. So
fair enough.
Yeah, yeah, but it's a bean.
Okay, it's a bean. And so I remember after work one day, I was joining you guys. Were already down there. You had already been out and about in the city. And I just remember the sweet, sweet smell coming off the L train in that one subway tunnel in the middle of summer. It smelled like bum piss and body odor. But then when I got outside, I was sweating. I think I had to buy a shirt that day. Because
you soaked right through it because it was
and
June
by the time I met
Chicago.
up with you, I had soaked through the new shirt as well.
Oh, that's pretty accurate. We were walking down Michigan Avenue, and it was so hot and humid that day that there was sweat on the top of our hands. Like you could shake your hand and the sweat would flick off. That's how bad it was. And we would have to step into a store along Michigan Avenue just to cool off. And then you would brace yourself to walk outside again. That's how hot and humid it was. Everyone complains about the weather, and for good reason. I mean, I know it's so overdone. Like, oh, Chicago, the weather. Just try it. Just try it. Just try going there during the dead of winter or during the summer, and you tell me if you don't complain. I mean, it's just brutal.
I can tell you, after being there that summer and then coming back the following winter for Ellie's volleyball tournament when it was like 6 degrees below zero, I actually enjoyed it more in the winter than I enjoyed it the previous summer.
I agree, because the winter you can bundle up. Like you can literally put goggles on if you want. But in the summer you can't keep shedding. Like there's only so much clothes you can take off or walk around in. You're just dying. Both are bad. And if you've lived in a climate that's pretty moderate, you're going to get your ass kicked in for Chicago weather.
Okay. Well, so those were my couple things about Roscoe Village and the stay we had there. So do you want to move on to a different trip?
Well, no, I just want to talk about the city in general. So there are different parts of the city that you can stay in and visit when you go. And I think it's important that we talk about the different parts.
I prefer Lakeshore Drive myself.
stop it right now because everyone prefers Lakeshore Drive. It is where like the millionaires live. So, and we have had the luxury of us staying on Lakeshore Drive several times because we've had friends who've allowed us poor people to stay in.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have had the luxury of not being wealthy, but knowing wealthy people.
Yes, we have. My friend's cat, her mother had a condo on Lakeshore Drive, so we got to stay there. And then
killer place.
And then we were so fortunate because
I highly recommend befriending Kat.
It's all benefits when you're friends with her. It's awesome. And then I have a cousin who had a condo on Lakeshore Drive, and so we got to stay there with her a couple of times. And yeah, so James has had his share of Lakeshore Drive, and he's had a very good visit.
They really roll out the red carpet for me when I go to Chicago.
So the Chicago is broken into 4 basically different areas of the city. I mean, you have North Side, then you have Lakeshore Drive, so that's the east side. Then you have the South Side, which could be South Loop, and then you have the West Side, which is West Chicago. Or just West Side of Chicago, whatever you want to call it. Each side kind of is a little different. Obviously, Lakeshore Drive, it runs along the lake, and there's Lincoln Park is in Lakeshore Drive. That's a very, very well-known area where DePaul. You
say the lake, we should clarify it's Lake Michigan, right?
Yeah, Lake Michigan.
Go on.
DePaul University is in Lincoln Park. It's a very, very popular area. Within Lakeshore Drive is an area called the Gold Coast because it's very, very expensive homes or condos along Lakeshore Drive. And it's a small stretch of property. We've had the luxury of staying on the Gold Coast. The benefit is that you're just closer to the city. I mean, well, also you're in multi-million-dollar houses and condos, but
that's the real benefit.
Yeah, but you're also close to the city. Then you have the West Side, which to me, the west part of the city or northwest part of the city is more families. Even though they're walk-ups, there's still a little front yard, a little backyard, and it's more family oriented. And then the South Loop, okay, when I lived there, South Loop was just crap. Like nobody lived in the South Loop.
You lived there in the 90s, so everything was crap when you lived there.
Okay, that is true.
You can stop saying that now.
That is true.
It was Shitsville back then.
Okay, now it's like kind of like up and coming. South Loop was usually artists or like just really like crappy areas. But now again, you've got like $500,000 condos. You have young people living there, cool bars, all of that. If I were going to suggest where to stay if you were going to visit Chicago, as a Chicagoan and as a visitor, I'm going to tell you my thoughts and then you tell your thoughts. I say for anyone coming to visit Chicago, stay in Lincoln Park. You don't need to rent a car if you're in Lincoln Park. Public transportation is pretty available, readily available any part of the city. But in Lincoln Park, there's so much to do. You will literally walk everywhere. If you need to Uber, the Uber rides are very short to downtown. You can also take a train downtown, but everything is right there in Lincoln Park. It actually does have a park and a zoo, and anything else you want. Great shopping, great restaurants, great bars, movie theaters, like everything is right there. It's expensive and there aren't a lot of hotels in Lincoln Park. So, it's a bit pricey, but if you can afford it, and if you're going for like, let's just say a long weekend, stay in Lincoln Park. I think it's really the best area of Chicago to stay in. What would be your recommendation? I
would say stay in Wrigleyville. It's probably a little more money to stay there, but you're close to the park. You're close to Murphy's Dugout. Murphy's Dugout,
Bleachers.
Right? Murphy's Bleachers. You're close to all the Chicago Cubs fans. Every bit of that area is pretty walkable, and lots of shops, lots of bars. So on the days where you're not going to the Cubs game, because the fact of the matter is when you're going to Wrigley, everyone is kind of a Cubs fan for a day. Even if you're not from Chicago, you get to be a Cubs fan for a day and high five with the Cubby fans and sit in the bleachers way out on the one side, in the outfield. And that's all fine and good. And when you're not at the game or when there's not a game going on, you can wear your Dodgers hat into the bars and argue about National League things with all the Cubs fans.
For sure.
It's a good natured, like it's not like going to a Raiders game,
There's nothing like going to a
nobody's going to get
Raiders game.
stabbed if you wear your Dodgers hat or your Mets hat or your whatever you want, your Padres hat into some bar with Cubs fans there. They're going to talk the night we were there. So the night we saw the game, we saw somebody pop one out into the outfield over the outfielders' heads, and it wasn't a walk-off home run, but it was a walk-off in the park hit that allowed them to win the game. And sure enough, after that game, we went to the bar afterwards. Patrick and I were there, and they were already talking about how 3 Cubs players who were the heroes of that game were getting traded the next morning.
Yeah.
Chris Bryant went to the Giants. Rizzo went to the Mets, and I forget who the third person was, but also it was a big deal. And it was just so funny how in tune with the team, everybody like grandmas sitting at the bar, knew about the impending trade and everything.
Oh,
and it was just, if you're a sports fan, it's a great sports city. There's just no question. I know the Bears suck. They haven't been good since '85, but
we still love our Bears.
Actually,
so
it's
those
not
are
true.
fighting words. Like, seriously.
There was a time
in the 90s.
No, it wasn't the 90s.
Okay, it was 2000s. Sorry, it was the 2000s.
When Peyton Manning first got his ring, he beat them in the Super Bowl. But anyway, obviously the Bulls are a shadow of their former selves. We alluded to that at the top of the show. But, there are some people from Chicago who are still kind of living in that era.
Everybody. It's everybody. I don't know. My friends.
I was looking right at you when I said it.
Yeah. My friends, like, you can't talk about any sports team when you go to Chicago, especially the Bulls. You can't talk about them. Like, our friends, like, all their codes in their houses are Michael Jordan's numbers. I mean,
my God. 23, 23, 23.
I mean, it's like wherever you go. I remember when my family came to visit me in Los Angeles, and like, he said something about the Bulls or Michael Jordan, and they just literally stared at him. And he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah, it's like not funny. Like, there's like, you don't do that. Those are fighting
Even
words.
if you're joking, they take it super serious.
They totally take it serious.
Like, what'd you say?
Yeah.
Michael Jordan's got 6 rings. He won 3, and then he came back and won 3 more.
Yeah. And if you lived in the city during that time, which I did and my family did, it was an amazing experience. So to live in a city with the Bulls, like, you can just forget about it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why I would say stay in Wrigleyville, because it's like, on any given day, it's packed with sports fans. But I'm a sports guy. So
yeah, but it's definitely not cheaper than, you said it's cheaper than Lincoln Park, or no, you said, what did you say? You said it's more expensive than Lincoln Park. It's actually not. Wrigleyville is probably on par with Lincoln Park. So there's no price difference. It's just matter of location. And I would say it's probably a little easier to get around in Wrigleyville than Lincoln Park. It's just not quite as congested as Lincoln Park. One thing I want to mention about Chicago that you touched upon is how you can go into any bar and talk sports. And I have to say that most people that are born and raised in Chicago are pretty indoctrinated at a very young age into sports. You have the Bears, you have the Bulls, you have the Blackhawks, you have the Cubs.
Don't forget the White Sox.
Who are the White Sox?
Come on.
Who are the White Sox? And so most people, whether you're a little bookworm or a punk rocker or a total jock, like, sports. It's very rare to find someone from Chicago that doesn't know sports. So, I love that about the city. Like, you can pretty much ask anyone anything about any sport. Even now, to this day, I could call somebody and say, hey, like, how are the Bears doing? And they'll tell me, oh, they're doing this. Or how are the Blackhawks doing? Oh, they're doing this. Like, everyone's into their sports teams in that city. And that's fun, because that gives you a community, that gives you like camaraderie. It's so much fun.
Yeah. But you bring up a good point, and that is there's much more to Chicago than sports. We can talk about, let's talk about culture before we get into food, because I know food we can just go on a rip.
For sure. But I do want to say, if you're going to visit the city, I think it's important you go see any kind of game if you can. Like, I think it's part of visiting Chicago. It's what makes Chicago, Chicago. Yeah. So I made sure when we were there, I took all the girls and our friends to a baseball game. It's really important. It's a big part of being in the city. There's no point in going to the city if you're not going to catch a ball game in the summer or a basketball game in the fall, or, a hockey game in the winter. So that's part of the Chicago experience. And we did that. And we've done that more than once.
I'm not going to disagree. I love sports. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. So go ahead.
So let's talk about culture. I mean, because you were there in the 90s, you can definitely tell everyone how you were fortunate enough, and I'm saying this with a tinge of jealousy because I grew up in the sticks and I just did not have the same opportunities when it came to seeing Prince at a small club or meeting Alice in Chains or, when they were on the way up or, I know everybody in Chicago likes to tear down the Smashing Pumpkins, but you were there when they were all on the rise.
Yeah. My girlfriend's sister dated Jimmy Chamberlain for years before they became the Smashing Pumpkins.
Who's Jimmy Chamberlain?
Drummer of the Smashing Pumpkins.
Okay, there you go.
And then when they were the Smashing Pumpkins, she was still dating him. So yeah, if you're a music lover like I was, Chicago is full of opportunities for you to see up and coming bands, to see well-known bands. When I was there, now, we're talking how, bots have taken over Ticketmaster, how difficult it is now across the country to see the bands you like. So I can't say how easy it is to get tickets in this day and age in Chicago. I just know that when I lived there, I had every opportunity to meet anybody I wanted or see them. I didn't necessarily, could meet everyone I wanted, but I definitely had the opportunity to see them. The beauty of Chicago, unlike a city like New York or LA, and I think New York is people don't go crazy. In LA, it's a little different. People go nuts. Like people will mob you. I was in Chicago when Guns N' Roses were recording Use Your Illusion. Mm-hmm. And they actually were recording at a bar that my boyfriend was, he wasn't working there at the time. He had just quit working there, but we knew the owners and whatnot. Slash, Axl, all of them would just walk around the streets, stop in coffee shops, stop in bars, stop in restaurants. I mean, there was always sightings of them, but nobody was like an idiot. Nobody like mobbed them. I remember a friend of mine worked as a waitress at Leone's, this really well-known Italian restaurant. And I guess they went in one night for dinner and she was a punk rock chick. And she said to them, "Oh my God, you guys look like Guns N' Roses." And they said, "We are." And she's like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we are." I mean, it was, so you'd hear stories like that all the time. I actually met Axl at a bar, like had a conversation with him, like a conversation, like more than just like one sentence at a bar. It was the bar that they were recording their album in because there was a recording studio upstairs. And so we knew they would hang out there and it was just cool. Like he was just chilling and like talking to everybody.
Back when he did such things.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that anymore.
No, he doesn't. So I was at a bar where Lane Staley, the lead singer of Alice in Chains, was. And that was huge because I had just seen them an hour before at the Riviera Theater. Somebody ran into the place we were in, a bar, and they said, "Hey, Alice in Chains is like having sushi next door." So we went over there. We were hanging out at the bar and we got to see them. It was really cool. I loved living in that city. There was one point, I can go on and on about this, but there was one time where I was at the Cubby Bear.
Relive the glory days. Go on.
I was at the Cubby Bear and Henry Rollins was doing a poetry slam at the Cubby Bear and we were just hanging outside. I didn't go in. I wasn't a huge Henry Rollins fan, so I was just like hanging out with my friends. And then my friend came up and walked up to us and said, "Hey," like literally half a block down is a bar and a music venue called the Cabaret Metro. And he came up and said, "Hey, there's this band here whose bus broke down. They are adding 3 more shows at Cabaret Metro just to make enough money to get back on the road. You guys should come see them." It was Jane's Addiction.
Oh, a little band called Jane's Addiction.
Yeah.
Perry Farrell, Dave Navarro.
Totally.
And friends.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was moments like that I was very fortunate to be a part of. And yes, I saw Prince at Cabaret Metro when he played after his performance at the Chicago Theater. That evening, he came for like a secret show at Metro, and Scottie Pippen showed up.
Nice.
I mean, it was just like amazing. In the audience was everyone, like from punk rockers to hookers to athletes to other musicians. It was insane. It was insane. He played for 3 hours, and I was literally 30 feet away from him. So the city, if you're a music lover, has so much to offer. It certainly did when I grew up, and I don't know. I don't think it's changed that much.
So you went to Lollapalooza when in the 90s?
I did. I went to Lollapalooza when it was at a place called Poplar Creek. Yes, I did.
Okay. So did it feel good scoring tickets for your own daughters
to
complete the circle?
I never thought about that until right now.
Yeah, a little Lion King, like, circle of life shit, right?
Wow. I actually forgot that I saw Lollapalooza. It's so funny.
It's so been spoiled.
So long ago. It was like so long ago. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, I went to the first Lollapalooza, and they went to one of the, in like later, what do you call it? Like incarnations of it, because it wasn't the same, obviously, as when I saw it.
Right, right.
Yeah, very cool, actually, when you bring it up.
Yeah. So, all right. So anyway, the music scene is still obviously alive and thriving. One of the things that I think about when I think about Chicago is how there are certain bands or acts that just avoid certain cities. Like there are plenty of acts that avoid Los Angeles. Like they just don't want to play. Like Tool does not play in Los Angeles. There are bands that don't want to play in Orlando. Everybody seems to agree on Chicago. Everybody goes to Chicago.
It's true. It's true. So if you're in Chicago and you are lucky enough to catch a show somewhere, do it. When we were there, we had heard rumors that after Lollapalooza, a lot of the bands will go and play the small venues. Unfortunately, they were 21 and over, so none of our girls could go. But forget Lollapalooza. If you're in town, check out a show. There's so many venues. I mean, go see somebody.
Yeah. Alternative rock is always in play. Plenty of rappers coming through Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
And even, even on the outskirts of town at some of their other venues, you get all the country music stars.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's like a northern city and not really, you don't think of country music when you think of Chicago, but they all come there.
They do. And the blues, there's lots of blues clubs in Chicago. Now,
naturally, yeah. Blues are huge.
Chicago's very much like Nashville. You can go and see anybody. The difference is that Nashville has a lot of bands that play openly, like in restaurants and bars. You don't have that in Chicago. But my point in comparing the two is that the probability is very high that you can catch a band playing while you're visiting.
Hey, All Stars, if you love where you're living, we want to know why. Hit the link tree below for all of our socials and give us your best pitch. We're trying to grow our podcast community so other listeners can hear from people like you. If your hometown rocks, don't keep it a secret. Hit subscribe and comment to let the other viewers in on the action. Whoever gets their pitch read gets a handy little $25 Amazon gift card. Thanks for engaging with us. And if you're a travel or real estate expert interested in coming on the show, drop us a line at info@skiptownallstars.com. Empty nest, full tank. Back to the show.
So one of the things that we talk about quite a bit when we visit a city is their transportation, their public transportation. And I guess, you know what, I can have you talk about this, James, because you've experienced the same cities I have. I grew up in a city with great public transportation, but coming from the sticks and compared to other cities that we've been visiting, where are you with public transportation in Chicago? Like if someone comes out, do you think they need to rent a car?
If you're staying in the city, I don't think you need to rent a car. You can probably use the L to get to different sections of town, right? And for those places that are a little off the beaten path, like you don't want to walk as far getting off the train, then I don't know, just take an Uber. I don't know if you necessarily need to rent a car. It seems like it would be more of a hassle trying to park it at your hotel or we got, pretty lucky every night that we tried to park at our Airbnb in Roscoe Village, but the Roscoe Village was crowded. I mean, but it wasn't as crowded as some places we've been to. I mean, It really wasn't. People kept saying to me,
oh, you're going to have a hard time finding parking. But we're so used to LA where there's zero spaces that you have to pay for valet to get your nails done. So I was like, oh, we could find parking here. And we did.
I don't know. I unless you were staying in the South Suburbs or something like that, or like maybe way out on the West Side, which I don't know enough of that area myself personally, but I guess it just all depends on where you're traveling to every day, or if you're in town for, work or something like that, and you want to stay in one of the great parts of the city, but you have to drive to like the South Suburbs to go, to visit an office or your regional manager or whatever the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
In that case, then I would say, rent a car, just because you can get back and forth to wherever you're going, but you could still, I would still always lean pretty heavily into staying in the city. If you don't have family in the suburbs or something like that, I would say you definitely want to stay in the heart of Chicago somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. It's for me, I think getting around the city is really, really easy. When you use the elevated train, which is called the L, it takes you everywhere. And then, it's so simple. And then, there's obviously some areas where the train goes underground also. The subway, you can, it's same couple different lines, but it's so simple to use. Like when you go to any train station, it tells you exactly the line like you want to take to get to what destination. It's clear. It's like ABC. One line is brown, one line is red, one line is green. It tells you the cities, the different stops. So, like if you want to go to Wrigley Field, you're going to take this train from that stop. If you want to go to the Sears Tower, you're going to take this train from that stop. If you want to go to Loyola University North Shore campus, you're going to grab this train, and it tells you clear on the map at the train station, like, where you pick up the train. Mm-hmm. You could take a transfer. It shows you, and they have people that are there also. So there's no shortage of Chicago employees for the train. Like whenever, even me, because they actually changed some of the train colors. Like when I was there, it would you take the amber colored line. Well, that's no longer a color. Like I think it's green now. So I had to ask one of the employees, and they have them there at the turnstiles when you're there. So I felt it was really, really easy. Probably how New Yorkers feel. Like it's pretty clear cut. You can easily take the train. The only thing is in a city like Chicago, people like to hang out late. Like dinner reservations are done at 7 or 7:30. So I personally wouldn't take the train at night. Not that you can't. I mean, I've taken the train at night so many times, but I'm a little older now, and I don't necessarily want to walk in heels to the train. So I would take a cab or an Uber, and there are plenty of cabs in that city. So, again, if you decided not to take a car and you're staying in the city, I would just recommend taking a cab or an Uber at night, and don't take the train.
And I think it brings up actually an important point for maybe there are people out there like on the verge of being empty nesters whose kids are considering schools in Chicago. Really amazing campuses and really walkable city. If your kids, if you're a bumpkin like me and you're sort of wondering what would life for my kid be like in Chicago, I can tell you Loyola University, magna cum laude,
representing right here,
class of
92,
98.
No, stop it. Yeah, that's really funny. That's really funny.
Loyola University, DePaul University, City School. If you're fortunate enough to get your kid into University of Chicago, hey, take out the second mortgage on that house and send them. It is an incredible campus with
beautiful.
An incredible education they're going to get there.
They have what is it called? The dome? What's it called when you look at stars?
Oh, observatory?
They have an observatory on their campus. University of Chicago has an observatory.
Yeah. Even all the way up in Evanston, Northwestern, my Lord, no wonder they get their asses kicked all the time in Big Ten football, because it's just like little brainy kids walking around everywhere there. Killer campus. If you can get your kid into Northwestern, do it. Figure out the money, make it happen. They're going to have the most fantastic school experience, which, I know a lot of parents don't really care about as much. I don't care if little Timmy is having the time of his life while I'm slaving away here. But in terms of education plus quality of life for your young student, I can't tell you like enough. If like I'm really shocked actually. Out of all three of our children, none of them ended up in Chicago.
I know. And Ellie got into Loyola. Mia got into Loyola. And Ellie got into DePaul. And so it really is kind of crazy that they didn't end up going there. But then you also forgot, which you really wouldn't probably even know this. University of Illinois has a campus in Chicago. It's called Circle. So it's U of I and Chicago Circle campus. And so that's on the southwest side of the city. But yeah, so you have 5 amazing universities, not to mention obviously private universities that are also within the city that offer so much. So as a Chicagoan, you don't have to leave the city of Chicago to go to school. And then you have also all the universities like around, like University of Illinois Champaign, Northern. Then you have ISU, Illinois State. Then you have Southern. Then you have Eastern. I mean, it's like there's so many colleges in Illinois. Like you don't have to go anywhere if you don't want to.
It's kind of like Boston that way. Where
yes.
Boston still has way more schools than I think. As I'm aware, Boston probably has more schools per pound for pound than any other city in the nation. But
yeah, probably you're right.
I mean, there's like a school on every block.
Yeah.
But Chicago has tons and tons of great opportunities for young students. So I just wanted to point that out. They will have public transportation. You will not have to buy them a car, even if they call you begging for one. They're don't spend the money. The kids can get around. Just fine.
I mean, each university is placed in their own specific area. We took tours, so we know, like University of Chicago's in Hyde Park. Wow. Public transportation is really easy in that area. Northwestern, like he said, Evanston, super easy. Then you have Loyola, North Shore campus, downtown campus. There's trains that run between the campuses, just like so easy. I took it. I would take the trains to both campuses for classes. Then you have DePaul, which is in Lincoln Park, and that's incredible. So yeah, U of I is a little further out, but still you could get there. It's just not quite as easy as the other 4 universities that we have mentioned. So yeah, schooling is fantastic and easy for any kid wanting to go to school there, easy for any parent going to visit their kid. Yeah.
And let's talk about connections. I mean, just like the New England schools or the New York schools, where your kids are meeting people, professors, industry professionals, you name it, that are going to help them shape their career and help like network them throughout their entire career. Like, outside of that region, Chicago stands up on its own as being a place where if your kid goes there and wants to make a go of things in their lives, they're going to meet people who will be like, you have friends from college, or you have an attorney that helped you out in college that like you're still friends with to this day.
Absolutely. And most people, I'm saying most, not all, of course, but a lot of people who go to those universities in Chicago stay in the city. So you have a lot of politicians who were born and raised in Chicago who went to Loyola or who went to University of Chicago and ended up starting a law firm in Chicago, or accountants or advertising people. I know so many people who went to Northwestern and ended up working in the city after college and staying there. And so then all of a sudden they're going back to Northwestern to talk to kids, or they're on the alumni club. So your little Joey is going to meet somebody who not only went to Northwestern, but lives in Chicago. I mean, it's such an easy connect in that city.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, look, this is easy for me to say, like coming out, I just feel like being in Chicago myself personally is on par, and you're probably going to disagree with me a little bit here. I did not feel in LA that it was as dangerous as I was hearing it was on the news. Like if I were to watch certain news stations, it was like LA's a dumpster fire, and it was in terms of homelessness. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel unsafe there. And I think Chicago also gets a bad rap. Like a lot of people say things about Chicago where, sure, there is gang violence. It's a big city. There are gangs there. They do have gang problems and violence problems in many sections of the city. But I don't know. It's really weird. It's like all the places we've ever stayed, been, walked around at night, all that stuff. It's like totally, I felt totally
Well, they have
fine.
a big police presence. I
They
mean,
do.
LA cut back on their police. So that is the difference. So Chicago didn't do that. They may have recently. I don't know, how it's been in the last 6 months. But when we were there, they had not cut back on their police. There was a police presence wherever you went. And they also don't have the same homeless problem that we have. And I think it's because of how cold it is. I'm guessing. But, somebody's going to fact check me and say it's also like, due to that they have a lot more facilities, that they have a lot more programs. And that could be, I don't know the ins and outs of the policies for their homeless population, but I could just tell you for a fact, when we were there, we saw 4 homeless people and we were all over that city. So they're doing something right. I don't know what it is. Are they moving their homeless people to a different area so you're not seeing them on Lakeshore Drive? I have no clue. But what I do know is that they don't have the same homeless problem that we had in LA.
They definitely do not.
So
it's not even close.
They have a police presence and they don't have a homeless problem. So you can actually go to the touristy areas of Chicago and not be bombarded with camps and people with shopping carts.
Yeah. So my point is, if you have a student that wants to go there, or if you're thinking about taking a trip to Chicago, but you're starting to believe all the hype on the crime, I would say it's worth a visit to check it out yourself for sure.
It's like any city. You don't go to the areas. Like, I'm from Chicago. I don't go to the South Side. I just don't, because the South Side has always been dangerous and it still is.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just don't go there. So, it's like pretty clear. It's like, if there's an area that's riddled with crime, stay away.
Yeah. And I would say, referencing back to our Memphis episode where we really dug into crime stats across the nation, just because Memphis was, typically at the top of all those lists. Chicago is really like, I think on many of those lists, somewhere between 10 and 15 or something like that. So it's just not as, in terms of metrics, it's just not as near the top of the list in terms of crime, violent crime, as the media would allow you to believe.
Right. There's that. But on the flip side, you do have people who would argue with us and say, well, you weren't there during Black Lives Matter, because a lot did change during the Black Lives Matter time, because what happened was, from, again, people that lived there who shared these stories with me, like, there was an element that thought it was an opportune time to come to certain areas and cause crime.
Sure.
That was not a reflection of Black Lives Matter. It was, unfortunately, a
opportunist.
And so those people who lost property, who had businesses on Michigan Avenue, who had to close, they're loud voices. And so you hear those and those
and
voices.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Yes. And those people moved out, and it sends a message to the rest of the country that this city is extremely dangerous. I don't think it's an overall representation of the city. We were there after Black Lives Matter, and we didn't feel that. We've been in cities where we have felt that.
Right.
We didn't feel that in Chicago.
All right, moving on. So
let's talk about the most important thing about Chicago.
The food.
Yes.
All right, let's
dig
get into it. Okay. So we are house divided. I am a Lou Malnati's, right? Lou
if you can't say it right, I'm not going to help you, because I don't even like that place.
Lou Malnati's, number one
Malnati's.
pizza. Number one pizza. Actually, Aurelio's is the best, but I like Lou Malnati's when it comes to deep dish.
I'm so torn, because I've always been a Giordano's deep dish girl, always. Giordano's thin crust as well. But Aurelio's, which isn't a big name in Chicago at all, it's a South Suburb pizza place.
It's so good.
It's so good because their sauce is like on the sweet side. Their sausage, I think, is better. I don't know. There's just something about Aurelio's that's so good. So I would still say Giordano's is like number one, Aurelio's number two.
ASMR Aurelio's. It's the sexiest pizza in Chicago.
I don't know about that. It's pizza.
It's pretty sexy if you ask me. Anyway, I love that place. Greek Town. Let's talk Greek Town.
Well, let's talk about Greek food in general. So one thing about Chicago is, there are lots of Greeks. Lots of Greeks in Chicago.
They're Greeks.
The beauty of Chicago is that you can literally jump into any deli, any restaurant, any hole in the wall and get a really, really good meal. You're lucky in that way. It's kind of like the same what people in New Yorkers say about New York. You can get a good sandwich anywhere. You can get a great hot dog on the corner. Chicago doesn't have like hot dog vendors like that, like New York does, but we certainly have plenty of delis, plenty of diners where you can just literally pop into and get a meal. You don't have to pull up your Yelp in Chicago. Really, like ever, unless you want to know where.
That's kind of true. I mean, you can tell just by looking at a joint, like, hey, this is a pretty good joint.
Yeah. And the one thing that most people from Chicago will say is this. It's very, very common. So one day I was visiting my cousin and I really wanted ribs. And Leon's Ribs is what was at one point one of the best places. This was like, I don't know, a few years ago.
How much for just one rib?
I have no idea how much for one rib, but any case, so Leon's Ribs is a really good place. And I said to her, I want Leon's. And she said, well, it's, I don't know if they're going to deliver this and that. So she gave me a menu for a place and she said, hey, this restaurant has ribs. And I grabbed the menu and before I even looked at it, she goes, it's owned by Greeks. So when you hear, and you'll hear that a lot in Chicago, it's owned by Greeks. That means it's amazing. And it doesn't have to be in Greek town. Greeks kind of run the show. Greeks and Italians will run the show when it comes to restaurants in Chicago. It's very old school. Now look, obviously like with the Food Network and all these Michelin, chefs, sure. Chicago has some amazing chefs that aren't Greek, but what I'm telling you, it's very old school Chicago that if it's owned by a restaurant's owned by Greeks, you're going to be guaranteed a great meal no matter what it is. So I had ribs made by Greeks, best ribs ever.
Barbecue?
Yeah, they're barbecue.
What?
Yeah. They were so good.
I need to try these ribs.
Yeah, you probably have.
Your story is dubious.
And you thought they were made by like probably a rib expert. No, they're made by my Greek family or my big fat Greek wedding. That's Chicago.
I want my ribs made by black folks. Okay. I want black folks making my ribs.
There's a Greek out there.
And I want to tip heavily.
There's a Greek out there that can compete with Leon's anytime.
And an extra piece of cornbread.
Okay.
The melty kind. Anyway, okay, if you say so, the Greeks are where it's at.
Yeah. But then we
could also talk about Chinatown.
No, we were talking about, you mentioned Greek town. And what I'm saying is you don't need to go to Greek town to have Greek food and it be amazing. But we have ventured off to Greek town. So Chicago is split into several different areas with regards to food. You have Little Italy, which kind of is like no more, but it used to be really big. It was Taylor Street. You had Little Italy. You have Chinatown, you have Greek town, you have Ukrainian Village.
Cabbage for everyone.
You have an area that's predominantly Polish.
More cabbage. Go on.
And then you have like the traditional like diner, burgers and fries. You don't really have like a little Mexico area or a little Puerto Rico area. Like you have Mexican.
No habla.
No, you have Mexican people there and you'll have Puerto Rican people there. But
plenty of good Mexican restaurants.
Yep. But there's not an area. But yeah.
We'll work on that.
But Greek town is an actual area. Again, doesn't have anything to do with Greeks owning, restaurants throughout the city. It's just another part of Chicago that you can go and visit and it's lined with all Greek restaurants. So it's
which
just
is
Greek
pretty
food.
Damn good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Like to have that many Greek restaurants concentrated in one place.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Our favorite is Greek Islands.
Greek Islands. I love that place. It's old school.
Yeah, it's excellent. So if you're going to go to Chicago, you want some Greek food, go to Greek Islands. Now, if you want some pizza, he's saying go to Lou Malnati's. I'm saying go to Giordano's. My South Side suburb friends are saying Aurelio's.
If you're a lonely woman, definitely go to Greek Islands because the waiters will give you extra attention.
Oh my God, we're back to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just remember, I think it was your niece, right?
Yeah.
In our party. Yeah. She was like, I'm so glad you showed up.
Yeah.
Because the waiters were hovering, circling like vultures.
Yeah, rubbing her shoulders.
She's a pretty girl. They should not be rubbing her shoulders.
They were rubbing her shoulders.
Way out of line. Nobody should be rubbing people's shoulders in 2023. Stop that shit, everyone.
Agreed.
Don't be rubbing the shoulders guy. Okay.
Steakhouses. Chicago is known for their steaks as much as they're known for their pizzas. And so you can pretty much get a great steak dinner anywhere. James and I, the last time we were there, we went to a place old school called
Leo and Leonetti's.
Gene and Giorgetti's.
Okay. Oh my God. That place was so good. It was an Italian steakhouse. So you could still get your lasagna and all that other stuff. But
it's old school. Like old school, meaning like it hasn't moved locations in 65 years.
Yeah. It was funny because I remember we were at a volleyball tournament and we had consumed carbs for like 4 days straight at every team meal or parent meal or every get together. It wasn't even the concession stands. It was all just like, 40 grams of carbs, no matter what you ordered. And finally I said, I just need vegetables and protein. And we ended up at an Italian place.
Well, it was a really good Italian place.
It really was. The steak was amazing.
Yeah.
So that was good. And that was in the middle. That was like right around the time where I was really starting to come around on Chicago, which we'll get into in a minute. But first, let's finish where we were headed. The steaks are great. Chinatown is great. I brought that up earlier.
Have you been to Chinatown with me?
Yeah, we had dumplings with Ellie, one of Ellie's teammates, and
you are so right. Yes,
homemade dumplings. I'm not huge on the homemade Chinese dumplings thing, but I do like the.
We had dim sum.
Yeah, we had dim sum. That's right.
Right.
I like the dumplings. I'm not so big into dim sum.
Did we do dim sum? Am I wrong?
Just the big, like the doughy pastries, I'm not as into.
Yeah, but we ordered other stuff. So it wasn't just all dim sum.
I like the soup dumplings.
It was incredible. It was so good.
I love soup dumplings.
That place was so good that the dad that we ran into like months later said he still thinks about that Chinese restaurant.
As well, he should. It was pretty delicious. I'm not huge into dumplings, but that place was the bomb. So, and there were like tons of those restaurants lined up and down the street. So we were there.
Yeah.
In the middle of in the dead of winter, we were slogging over there. Oh
we were.
God.
We really wanted.
I think that was actually a balmy day. I think it was like 22 degrees.
It was bathing suit weather.
Bathing suit weather. Yep.
Yeah, we really wanted Chinese, so we were willing to make that happen, and we walked quite a ways to make it happen.
Yep.
We talk a lot about people when we look at areas that we want to like possibly live. Like, this whole podcast is about, could we live here? And you bring up people a lot. Like, I don't like the people here. I visited here. Like, we love Texas because everyone was so nice.
Yeah.
I'm obviously biased. I'm from Chicago, but you know what? What's your take on the people? Because really, like, your take is more accurate than mine.
I love that Chicagoans, male, female, everyone in between, are kind of all like friendly to a point and then no bullshit to a bigger point. And that is the way I would sum it up. It's like everybody's cool until you're not cool, and then you're getting your head kicked in.
That's pretty accurate.
That's Chicago in a nutshell. And so as long as everybody's cool, like everybody has a Just Be Cool t-shirt on, they're just wearing it wherever they're walking. But the minute somebody is not just being cool, then all of a sudden somebody's like getting drug out to a sidewalk somewhere.
Yeah, that's actually really accurate. I mean, like the most like Gandhi-esque person, don't mess with them. If you like, they will like mess you up.
Oh, absolutely. There are, if you go, where was it? Wacker or whatever, where all the office buildings are and all that stuff.
Wacker Drive.
Yeah, wherever we like, go to the Berghoff.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And mess with an accountant at lunch and you will get your ass beat. Like Chicago does not play. The white collars can get down in the mud with the blue collars there. Like they can fight just as well. They all came from the same neighborhood.
That is very, very accurate.
And
God, that is so true. I never even thought about that.
I love that about Chicago. I love that. Like they're hard-nosed, but nice. They're nice. And then we're hard nosed. And so it's like, it's a lot of carrot and stick in Chicago, That's
so funny because I just, as a person growing up there, I just remember I would always say to my friends, can we not get into a fight tonight? Like seriously, like I had nice clothes on.
Yeah.
I remember I was at a bar one time, we're watching a band and my friend was standing behind me and he had his hand on my shoulder. And next thing I knew, there was a splash of blood on my shirt. And I looked and he's in a fight with somebody. Like, what the hell just happened here? Literally, what just happened here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's very, it could be just like somebody had a few drinks too many kind of thing. And then next week in the bar, they're all saying like that person is saying sorry to everybody in the bar. And they're like, it's okay, Jimmy, just, watch your consumption tonight and everything will be cool, whatever. And it's like, meanwhile, he's still nursing like, scabs on his nose or whatever from when he got drugged down the pavement.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I mean, I like that a lot about it. I like people that drink old style beer. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's like, there's a beer in Pittsburgh or there's a beer in Boston or there's a beer. And it's just like the beer in Chicago. And when I see old guys, young guys mixing it up, watching sports, drinking old style, I'm like, this is a lot of fun until somebody has a few too many and then someone's getting their ass beat. But,
it's true.
I love that attitude. I would say generally every time we've been there, everybody is super warm, wants to talk. Your family, your extended family, your friends, everybody, boyfriends of friends, your girlfriends, whatever. Everybody is just they put themselves out there and they do it without pretense. And it doesn't matter what their station is in life or whatever. You want to talk about the best place to get pizza? We'll talk about that. You want to talk about stocks? We'll talk about stocks. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about, Mike Tyson or whatever?
That's true.
We'll talk about any of that stuff. And so very culturally aware people, very politically aware people.
Well, the one thing I do remember
when politics are baked in.
Yeah, when I first took you, I don't know if you remember the very first visit, I took you to Chicago. I said to you, okay, so just so you know, whoever we're sitting with, wherever we go, everyone talks Chicago politics. So just if you're going to you may get a little tired of it. It's just how it's like, hey, how are you? How are things? Did you hear about what the mayor did today?
Yeah, I know just more, like that. I know more fun facts about Old Man Daily than the average Ohioan should probably
When
know.
I get on the phone with my cousin Carol, we talk about Lori Lightfoot all the time. I'm like, I don't even live there anymore, but I'm like, hey, what's going on with Lori Lightfoot? Like, she's the mayor right now of Chicago. Yeah. So it's like, it's just everyone knows. If you don't know local politics in Chicago, you're an idiot.
That is kind of true. If you can't keep up the conversation about local politics, again, I think it's just so baked in though. You're talking at this point, 3, 4, 5 generations of Chicagoans who are just like, they grew up hearing all these names. There was a Daily, then there was a Father Daily, Son Daily. And then there was, like all these attorneys and now the governor. And, it's just, your governor was the one that went to prison. What was his name?
Come on now.
The guy with the...
I know. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. Yeah, you're right. He did go to prison.
I'll put it on the screen right here.
Oh, man. I could see his face. Okay. Just can't see his name.
Yeah.
All right. So do I act different when I go home?
Yes, absolutely. You talk different. So say the word... Say for me now. Say for the nice people listening to the podcast. Say the word viaduct.
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 Mm-hmm.
You just said viaduct.
Viaduct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sandwich.
Yes. Yeah.
Sandwich.
Yeah. Your vernacular changes. Your accent changes.
Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely act different. It is funny because, I tease you. I ridicule you for, living in the past with the Bulls and all that stuff. But
everybody does though.
Everybody does. You're right. And you guys talk as if it's still 1997.
We do.
And that's cool. That's great. But you, having been removed from the city for 26 years, can just go back there and like mix it up and know all of the local players. I'm not even talking in terms of sports. I'm talking in terms of politicians or taste makers in Chicago or socialites or whatever. It's like, it's as if you've never left when you go back.
I think it's because I stay in touch with everybody too. Probably. It's not like I left the city and left the city. I literally just physically left the city. I always go back to visit and I stay in touch with my family and my friends. So, I mean, I have friends who own businesses there. So, it's still a part of me. I mean, at one point you and I begged you for years to like, let's get an apartment in Chicago. Let's get a house in Chicago. Like, even if we could live part-time, so I had always thought I was going to move back to Chicago. Here was my plan. My plan was this. I was going to move to LA, work in the record business. And then at 30, I was going to have my fun. I told all my friends this. And then at 35, I'm coming back to Chicago and I'm going to meet an attorney and I'm going to get married. And then it's going to, like, I'm going to travel the world.
And I ruined it all.
A little bit.
If you weren't such a tramp, you wouldn't have gotten knocked up.
Stop it.
Anyway.
So it obviously didn't happen that way, but I'd always planned on going back to Chicago. So my heart was still always there. And I have to say, I would say my love affair with Chicago probably ended in January 2022.
Oh, and it's right. Like, that trip was so instrumental in me saying, you know what, I could actually do this. And I'll tell you why. Because the summer that we had been there was so brutal. And I remember we were in Downers Grove for an event with friends. And that was so sweltering and brutal in terms of humidity and everything.
And heat.
And at that point, I was like, it's so like two ends of the spectrum. But then in January, it was weird. It was like freezing outside. But I remember walking and like looking at Lake Michigan with cousin Big Rick at the tournament. We walked outside of the convention center or whatever, and we're just standing there. And it's like, sure, you could see our breath and all that other stuff. But it was like, you know what? This is really pretty. Like, I could live in a picturesque place like this.
It's not the cold. It's not the cold that I can't handle. That is part of it. It's being trapped inside your home for 5 months. I mean, to me, that isn't living. Yeah. I guess I lived in Los Angeles for so long, and there's a part of it too that I asked for so long to move back to Chicago that I just gave up that dream. So when I was like finally done, because it's like, you know, you can only ask for so long and it doesn't happen. And you're like, okay, it's not going to happen. So you just like let it go. And that's part of it, that I just let that dream go. And then when you finally came around and was like, hey, I think I can do this. It was like that dream has already, that ship sailed for me. And getting back to it then, like in my head going, okay, could I really do this? It's like, just not into it anymore. Like, I'm not into, I used to think like how cozy and sweet it was to like be trapped in your house for a few months and like making stews and soups and like getting by, you know, the fire and having people over.
Okay, that doesn't sound great at all, but
oh, that sounds awesome.
Disagree, but
okay,
but my argument in this moment would be, we weren't doing any of that. Like, we were staying in a hotel. We were there for a tournament. We were still getting out and doing stuff like every single night.
No, because we're only there for 7 days. If you live there, it's just so hard to get around. I mean, people do it, but it's just cold upon cold. And I don't want to be inside that much. My life has changed now, I guess, over the course of all these years being away, that like, I like in December living in a city where I can still go outside and take a nice hike if I wanted to. So I don't think I'm ever going to live in a place where it's bitter, bitter cold anymore. Since Chicago is out for me. Could I live in Chicago like, you know, March to April?
From May to June?
From March to April?
Yeah.
Sure. I can't even say March. Truthfully, it's May.
March is still
May
like,
to June.
It's still like 32 degrees.
Can I live there from May 1st to May 30th or whatever, how many days are in May? Yeah. And then can I live there in November? I can live there in May, November. The first time
we took the baby there, it was like Parker was a baby. It was like, you know, we were like in the horse and carriage. You went, oh, it's nice. Let's do the horse and carriage.
It was April or May. It was so
46
cold.
degrees.
Yeah, it was. And then the next day when we left, it was 82. Like, it makes no sense. So I think I'm over that. I'm just over it. I've been gone too long. I'm like, I can't do that anymore.
That's so funny because I was at the point where I was like, this city has so much to offer us as a family, especially if a kid ends up going here, which at that time I thought was still plausible. I was like, forget the weather. Like, yeah, that sucks. It's kind of like the traffic to LA is the weather to Chicago. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's true. You're right. That's a great comparison.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just something you deal with if you want to live there. And at that point, we And at that point, it's like I had toured like the whole South Suburbs area. I had seen houses. I had seen where your friend Kat lives in Flossmoor or Homewood or Homeschool or whatever the hell that place is. And those houses are great. Like at the time, I don't even know what they're pricing out at now. They probably have increased. But at the time, it was like 500 to 750K gets you a really nice classic house,
like 3,000 square feet,
that doesn't look like every other house on the block. It's not a cookie cutter stamp McMansion. It's really like character driven house that's been there a long time,
100 years old.
Yeah, has incredible bones, as they say, and people have like kept it up over the years. So
the dream is over.
I know that dream is over. You
waited too long.
I know. I guess so. I tried to get on Oprah way back when.
No, he didn't try hard enough.
Good thing, because look, that show went away.
I know, but we could have done it. There's some could have. There's so many of those, or we could have done it and we just didn't. But I'm not blaming you. It's just fear. It's like the unknown. It's like whatever. So it didn't happen. So it's not going to happen. So anyway,
it could still happen.
All right, let's talk about the rest of our visits. So I change when I'm there. I'm a different person. My vernacular changes. Does my personality change?
I would say.
Do I want to fight?
No, you don't want to fight. Your personality is exaggerated. Like you're kind of on meth a little bit. Like you.
What the heck does that mean?
Like you can go. Like you're up earlier, you're up later. Like you pack more in for sure. Like, and you're more energetic throughout the day. You're not you have these spells in normal life where you can be a nap taker. If there's a 2-hour window and you can bust out a 45-minute nap or an hour-long nap in there, you will do it. In Chicago, you don't do that. So you totally you're like, go. And then we have to meet this person here. And then my brother's meeting us here with my nieces. And then we're doing this and then we're doing that. So it's like, I'm exhausted. I want a freaking nap.
Well, it's always nice. Like, look, when we go and visit, I do ask friends and family to come out to like hang with us, and everybody always does. So I love that everyone makes that effort, and I don't want to miss a minute of time with them.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So are we heading into top fives and bottom fives now?
I think we should do top 5 and bottom 5 for sure.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. So I'm going to do top 5.
Go ahead.
All right. So in relation to other cities that we visited, I'm going to just talk about their transportation. It's excellent. So transportation is one of the top 5 for me. As stated in this podcast, we talked about it at length. You can get around very easily. Number 2, I love the fact that they plow their streets. It's like amazing. We've been to cities where the mayor's asleep at that wheel, and the snow is piling up and you can't get through a city. We've been there for Missouri. We went to Kansas City and it was horrendous. I mean, I literally was looking down from our window saying, where the hell is the mayor right now? Why are there no snow plows? Because this shit wouldn't happen in Chicago. And so they really are very good. I mean, look, we lost a mayor one year because they didn't get the snow plows out in time.
Yeah.
The roads, I think, had been covered in snow for like 3 hours, and we literally that mayor lost the election the following year.
It's a serious business. I mean, I joke all the time about how in LA, you get a little sprinkle on the road, and all of a sudden 10 cars are broken down, and there's 3 pileups, and it takes you an hour and a half to go 12 miles to get to work in the rain in Los Angeles. And I will be on the phone with you in bumper to bumper traffic, and you'll say, how's it going? And I'll say, well, I had to call work and tell them I'm going to be late, just like every other employee. And I will say, right now in Chicago, there's a guy going down the Dan Ryan, which is a sheet of ice, and he's got a gin and tonic in one hand and his girl on the phone in the other, and he's steering with his pinky. Like,
yeah, that's
Chicago driving.
Yeah, it's true.
And so it is serious business when the roads aren't plowed. I mean, I get it,
I love the fact that there's 2 airports in the city. So if you want to fly into the city, you can go into O'Hare Airport, which is the north part of the city, or Midway, which is the south suburbs. It just depends on where you're going to stay. Both airports have benefits and downsides. I've taken both airports. It just depends, again, where I'm going to stay and how much it's going to cost for the trip. Just know this. When you take a plane leaving O'Hare, you will probably be delayed. Don't know why. They're notorious for being delayed. It's their reputation, and it always happens. but they have 2 airports, and it makes it really easy as a traveler to find flights that are convenient for your time. So I love the fact that our city has 2 airports, and it's easy to get in and out of it. Keep the delays of O'Hare in mind when doing that. Obviously, number 4 is the food. I love the fact that you can get any kind of cuisine you want in this city, and you won't be disappointed. If you are, then you picked one out of 1,000 restaurants. So it was shitty, and it's just poor luck on your part that you did that. But most of the time, anywhere you go, you're going to have a great, great meal. I like the people. I really find it to be a very friendly city, talkative. People will engage with you most places. And it's not just because I'm here. I'm from there, but honestly, like, if you need help, you can stop and ask somebody, and they're more than happy to tell you what direction you should be headed in or where not to go. I just find it to be a great city for tourists because most Chicagoans are very nice and very helpful if you are trying to find your way around the city or just want to have a conversation with someone at the bar. And then my bottom 5 would be, I hate the fact that everyone in Chicago drinks. It's very much a drinking city. We've talked about bars in this podcast quite a bit, and that's because they're everywhere. And as much fun as it is going into a bar, when you grow up in a city like Chicago, a lot of your friends tend to be alcoholics. A lot of them had DUIs at a very young age. And to me, that's like a downside. I'm not much of a drinker. My mom owned a bar. My dad was a Chicago police officer. So I'm very, very Chicago. But I didn't drink because I saw so much of it around me growing up. And as a young adult, I saw so much of it as well. I mean, look, the first time I took James to visit my friends in Chicago, what did you find in the vegetable drawer?
A case of beer.
In the vegetable drawer.
Yeah. There was no celery.
Yeah. And he was like, wow, they're serious drinkers here. Yeah. And they are. So for me, that's a real downside of the city. Another downside of the city is, as much as everyone tries to be PC, it's still a city divided when it comes to race. A lot of people of color live on the south side, and a lot of people of non-color live in the city in the north side. And it's just unfortunate. Doesn't much matter that Barack Obama was our senator and he went to University of Chicago. I mean, there's so many celebrities that come from Chicago that are of color, and it's still a city divided of color. And we have a Black lesbian mayor, and it's like we still have a city divided on color. And so that's really just so unfortunate. I wish it wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. Number 3, I'll say this. I know taxes have been increasing quite a bit in the city, so it's very hard now to afford a home. That is a downside. It used to be the place where you can get homes either in the city, a little outside the city, or in a great suburb. That's not the case anymore. You have to go really, really far out to get a home. So that saddens me that Chicago now has turned into a city of just really wealthy people that can afford to live there. I wish it weren't the case. I mean, I can't afford to live in that city. I would have to go far out, at least 50 minutes to find a home that was in our price range. So that makes me sad that it's just been priced out of our level of income. So another downside for me is what we talked about, the weather. It's keeping me from becoming a resident of that city once again. So weather really does suck. And I would say make your travel plans around the weather if you want it to be enjoyable. If you don't want to have to buy a shirt like James did to just walk around the city, I would say plan your trip for April, May, November, October, November. April, May, October, November, because weather really can change the fun in your travel. And if you're paying all that money to go there, don't let weather hamper what you're doing. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like that those are really honestly 4 that I really feel. I unfortunately don't have 5. Sometimes we hit cities where we don't have even 3. So So unfortunately in this one, Chicago only has 4 things that I dislike about it.
Okay. Well, mine overlap yours somewhat.
Okay.
I'm going to start with my bottom 5 because there's a redemptive factor in my top 5.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I agree with you on weather. The weather sucks. so many months out of the year. Again, I made my peace with that. I was okay with it because I really like the people. I like the culture. I like the sports. I like the suburbs. I like the city. I like Lake Michigan, you name it. So for me, it was like one of those things where it's like, yeah, the weather sucks, but I'm willing to overlook it. Traffic sucks. And one of the big things that, prevented us from having a good time. I remember the very first time we got there, the very first time you brought me there was we sat an hour and a half traffic getting to your friend's house. And by the time I found that beer in the vegetable drawer, I was ready for it after a drive like that. So there's that. Crime is obviously an issue. That's an issue for any big city. I would also say that the politics in some ways remind me a little bit of Mexico City. I'm not going to lie, where it's like, the politicians are all in the bag.
It's true.
And super corrupt. And you can see people wear that on their faces a little bit in Chicago.
They do.
They've just resigned themselves to it. Hey, that's just the way it is. And as long as I get mine, I'm good. So that kind of sucks. But I guess that's the nature of living, especially in a capitalist society or a city that has drug problems. So anyway, it just being in Mexico City reminded me of being in Chicago, if that makes sense in that regard. And then the last thing that I really don't like about Chicago is, at least where we've stayed the last couple trips, the coffee game there really needs to be elevated. Like, it's a major city. It should be competing with,
Seattle,
cities like Seattle, cities like Boston, cities like New York, in terms of just getting a decent Americano. Like, it's so beyond to me that I have to walk 2 or 3 miles from my Airbnb just to get a decent cup of Joe. It's insane. So with all that, I'm going to give you my top 5 now. So my first top 5 is, even though the weather sucks, you mentioned it earlier, the weather response is amazing. For a city its size to get everybody back on their feet after a major snow or a major blizzard, the way they do it, the way they go about it. There are some cities, Kansas City, I'm talking to you, can't wait to do that episode. Kansas City and other cities like it could definitely learn a lot from the city of Chicago when it comes to weather management.
We should get Cousin Rick to do weather management in Kansas City.
We absolutely should get Cousin Rick to do weather management in Kansas City. Okay. And so then I mentioned traffic. The good thing about Chicago is that despite all that traffic, they actually have a pretty decent public transportation system. You can get on it and you could pay a few bucks and you can get to wherever you want to go, and you can doom scroll all you want while the train is moving. You can catch up on Medium or Huffington Post or redstate.com or whatever your proclivity. And by the time you're done reading a few articles, you are exactly where you want to be for a few bucks and not a lot of trouble. It's a really great public transportation system. What else did I mention? Crime. Well, there's not much I can do to fix that.
You're talking about your top 5.
Oh yeah. I'm talking about my top 5. I was going to offset crime, but there's nothing I can do about that. I guess you did mention that there's a bit of a police force, but anyway, I also like the people as an outsider, somebody who's not a native Chicagoan. I love it that Chicagoans of all stripes, all races, all creeds, all ages are willing to talk to a bloke like me when they see me sitting in a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop or whatever. The people are super friendly. They make you feel like you belong in Chicago, whether or not you feel like you really do. And that's really a testament to them. My fourth one is Beans and Bagels in Lincoln Square.
Lincoln Square.
So, Chicago could definitely up its coffee game, and Beans and Bagels is proof. My friend Adam Snow is up at 5 a.m. every morning, whipping up like handcrafted scones and croissants made from like all these crazy, ancient grain ingredients. And his baked goods alone are enough of a reason to go. But the coffee is impeccable. It is properly sourced. It's organic. It's like he puts so much thought. He's traveled the globe, literally traveled the globe, been in coffee competitions. I know I'm probably saying that incorrectly.
No, but he dedicates his life to like making the perfect cup of coffee.
Yes, he really does.
Honestly.
And you know what? It shows. Go to Beans and Bagels in Lincoln Square. I cannot recommend it enough. Adam Snow is totally going to set you up. I love that place. He's even he was sending me coffee on the West Coast when I was there for a while. I'm fortunate enough to know him, your old college radio station buddy.
Yep.
Back when
he went to Loyola.
When you guys were at Loyola together. So anyway, Adam, props. Nice job with the coffee and the beans and the bagels. And then finally, my last one is, we've mentioned him. He's an enigma. We mentioned him in several times of this podcast. Big Rick. Denise has a cousin named Carol, who's married to a guy named Big Rick, who then had a kid named Little Rick and a girl named Lindsay. And Ricky. So Ricky lived in Los Angeles for us for a while. He's far surpassed anything that we've done. He's driving a Maserati. He's doing really well. And one of the reasons Ricky is doing really well in Los Angeles is because of Big Rick and the work ethic that he's imparted on both of his children, both very successful at what they do. Loving wife, has really shown me throughout the years what hard work and good nature and just a willingness to listen when he's in the wrong and a willingness to gently nudge you when he's in the right. and he's not afraid to, cook up a
prime rib dinner.
A prime rib that fell off the back of a truck. We had to teach Parker what that meant. And so she literally thought it fell off the back of a truck. But anyway, Big Rick is my favorite reason to go to the city of Chicago. I love Big Rick. I love you, Big Rick. He watches all of Ellie's volleyball games. He's a volleyball fan. There's just no part of our lives that he hasn't supported.
It's true.
And
it's really
Carol
true.
hasn't supported.
Yeah,
I know I'm like talking a lot about Big Rick, but Carol really
His
is
wife.
like, I mean, I know she's like, behind the scenes kicking him in the balls. So good job, Carol. Way to raise that man right. Anyway, so that's it. Cousin Rick and Cousin Carol, love you guys both. You're the best. You're the best. You're the reason I want to move to Chicago.
Wow, they topped pizza.
Yeah, I don't care about pizza that much.
Okay, they topped Chicago pizza. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Carol, I don't know. You weren't on my top 5. Food was on my top 5, I think. I'm so sorry, Carol.
The O'Cray family makes my top 5.
That's awesome. Love you guys.
Love you guys. All right. So that's it, I guess, for this episode. This is a good episode. I liked it.
I would say go visit.
Yeah, definitely go visit Chicago. You are going to have the time of your life.
Just don't go to a White Sox game.
You can go to a White Sox game.
Whatever.
Just don't beat up the umpire.
Well, that too.
Anyway, that's a wrap on the Chicago episode. Check them out.
Empty nest, full tank.
See you guys next week.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.